You don't need a huge down payment to buy your first property. What you need is energy, a strategy, and sweat equity.
Rainbows to Riches.
Welcome back to Rainbows to Riches, guys. I'm Rayleigh Wells, and until recently, I had no financial guidance until I met Drew at the gym, and through him, I met his husband. We not only became very close friends, but also they became my financial mentors and business partners at this point, let's say it. And we decided to put all of these lessons and these conversations online for our community and build a community where we can safely talk about personal finance.
I'm Drew. I've owned companies in 3 different countries. I've also bought, sold, and rented out quite a bit of both residential and commercial real estate.
My name is Michael. I'm Drew's husband. When I met him about 25 years ago, I had just come through bankruptcy. With his help, I was able to get my finances together, buy my first property that we live in, and open a business.
And alrighty, today's episode, we are going to be talking about real estate again, and it's part 2, but this time we're focusing on financing. So I guess the financing part of real estate, how to, get a mortgage, all of these basic questions that we have when we are thinking about acquiring our first property. And it is important to acquire your first property, especially
Absolutely.
for our community. I do have a friend who's a real estate agent, and she told me that she often gets this question a lot, which is, do I even need a real estate agent? Do you guys think that's necessary? How does it work to get one? What is your opinion?
A lot of people think they can get along without a real estate agent. And the only potential reason you ever wouldn't use a real estate agent is if you were buying a property from a close friend or a relative, because a broker gets a fee, a well-earned fee. A broker has to drive you around and take you to places, use all his or her contacts, has listings that you will never see on the multiple listing service, MLS. So the only reason you'd ever not use a broker is to avoid that fee, which is not paid by you as the buyer, it's paid by the seller. But if the person who sells the house pays for the fee for the broker, in most cases, there are times you hire a broker and there is a fee. That usually doesn't happen, but it can. But the broker for the seller is getting a fee somewhere between 3 and 6%, or 4 and 6%, averages around 5. If you're going to buy a house from your friend and you say, look, don't use a broker, you don't use a broker as the seller, I won't use a broker as the buyer, deduct 5% off the house right away, right off the top, they would probably agree to that because there's no reason they should be charging that to you.
Can I just ask a question? As I understand it, when there are fewer and fewer properties on the market to sell, which makes it a seller's market, as they call it, often I've heard that agents will reduce their fee in order to get a listing.
Often.
So if somebody is not sure they're going to sell their house and a real estate agent contacts them, they can incentivize them by saying, rather than I'll take 3%, I'll take a 2%. Mm-hmm. So therefore, the seller would be more likely to say, all right, I'm going to use that real estate agent. That is something that you can negotiate?
You can always negotiate. You can always try to negotiate it.
Okay.
What you have to remember is there's a fee. Let's say the fee is 5%.
Okay.
The broker who is selling you, the agent who is taking you around and doing all this work, has to split the fee between him or herself, the broker that he or she works for, the seller's broker, and the seller's agent. So your real estate agent is getting 25%, 1/4 of that fee for him or herself. They don't get 5%; they're getting a quarter of that.
And they both need an agent because
If both use an agent,
If you're going to buy a house, how do you know where the houses are that are for sale? You can look in the newspapers. There are some, but the MLS listing
Can
is.
the same agent play both roles?
Yes.
it's a conflict of
No,
interest.
no, not both roles, but like in
Repres-
the same transaction. But
Can
both
they be
roles in
both?
different transactions. Yeah, right. If he's selling let's say that I'm an agent, I can be on the seller's side for this property or from the buyer's side from
A
this
different property.
Yeah.
Yes.
For a different property, yes. You can also be for the same property. If you're a seller, you're an agent, real estate agent. A real estate agent has to work for a broker, at least in most states. That real estate agent is going to get a quarter of the percentage of the sale. The the buyer has another agent. If coincidentally that real estate agent who's selling is a friend of yours, the buyer, they can work together. They can work as one, but usually within the brokerage that the real estate agent works in, this is becoming very complicated. It's not supposed to be. In the real estate agent in that who works in that brokerage will ask his or her friend, "Hey, would you please represent you as the
Because
buyer?"
it could be considered a conflict of interest because each agent is supposed to represent their client's best interest. So as a seller, you want to make sure that you get the most money for your property. As a buyer, you want to make sure you get it for the least amount of money. So if there's only one person in the middle, who are they?
Who are they working for?
So it's not a good idea. I know that there have been opportunities for people to sign off on it. But as a general rule, you want your agent, they need their agent.
Okay. You said something that was interesting. When there's fewer houses in the market, it makes it a seller's market.
Right.
Can you explain?
Sure. When everybody in town wants to buy a house, but there's no houses, nobody wants to sell their house, that means the people who decide to sell have all the power. You know, if people are walking up and down the street saying, I want to buy a house, I want to buy a house, none of them are for sale. The one person who goes, I'll sell my house, they have the power. So it's therefore a seller's market. If, on the other hand, people are all deciding they're going to leave a town because the depression, the finances in the town are poor or something, everybody decides, I'm going to pack up and leave.
Like
You
the
can-
supply and demand.
Exactly. That's exactly what it is. So if you want to buy a house and you're in a neighborhood where there's 20 houses for sale, you are going to be the one that they're going to try to buy my house, buy my house. So then you have the power.
And they can lower the rates.
Yeah.
They'll lower what they're selling it for.
Right.
Because, they'll raise what they're selling it for because they're the only one who's selling
If it's a seller's market.
in the seller's market.
Next, I feel like mortgage would be a very interesting topic, obviously, about real estate and financing your first house. And I feel like mortgage, like even like just the word, it scares a lot of people because it's a lot to
Yeah,
understand.
the
It's-
mortgage. Yeah, people look at
there is
mortgage
a
like
taboo type of thing, not really talked about, but I feel like there's an elephant in the room when people first are introduced to this term.
mortgage is simply a loan. That's all it is. It's just a loan.
Intimidating, I would say.
But it's just a loan. That's if you think of it as a loan, but it's secured by a house. If I loan you $50 and you don't pay me back, I'm out $50. If I sell you my house and you don't pay for it, I take back the house. It's a secured property.
Yeah.
So but that's all that mortgage means. It just means it's a loan, but it has a secured aspect to it, which means they can take it back if you don't make payments. But let me just mention one other reason that you should have a broker, especially if you're LGBTQ plus. Plus. For all those
So many
pluses
pluses
out there. A real estate broker will know who's gay friendly or not, and will help guide you both to get the best rate, to get the broker who's easiest to work with, and a broker who is comfortable with working with LGBTQ folks.
I think you need to clarify that because I lost you. The real estate agent will know
Absolutely.
the broker?
The real estate agent, you have finally decided you want this house.
Yes.
Let's say a gay couple.
And gay couple,
You
they
want-
want, this is the house that they want. They have to seek financing. The real estate broker will be very helpful in telling you different agents, different mortgage brokers. They're the real
Mortgage
estate
broker. Okay.
The real estate agent,
Also, there's a mortgage broker.
Yeah.
you don't have to use a mortgage broker, but there are mortgage brokers, and there are some who are very LGBTQ friendly, probably because they are LGBTQ, or they just are, they're comfortable with that. Some people are not.
And what would the mortgage broker do in that whole transaction?
Would tell you the places that you can go to get the best rate based upon who you are. There are mortgage companies who look very favorably on city workers, governmental workers, because those people kind of can't lose their jobs, supposedly. And the mortgage lender says, I like those people. I can kind of count. I'm sure that they're going to pay their bills. They have whatever history they have. You'd never know that in a million years. You'd never even know about that broker, let alone what he or she has a bias
So it's
about.
basically, it's an internal network, like a networking system to sell houses, basically.
Yeah, absolutely.
What, for instance, there are certain mortgages that they are seeking out minorities or seeking out women because their financial philosophy is to empower different groups. So there would also be fewer, but brokers who are looking for loans to an LGBT community.
I have a question of something that I saw on the internet one time when I thought it was very weird. I think it was somebody trying to advertise something to not use one of these brokers or something like that. And they were basically like coming for the industry of coming for the real estate industry in that it's all a scam, it's a pyramid scheme, and the people who are
What?
very rich are the ones that actually sell houses. Like, is that a fallacy, or is that, like, what do you guys think about that? And have you ever heard of?
Never heard of it.
Don't know
Sounds
what
like
you're
somebody
doing. There's
made it up.
always going to be someone out there who's going to tell you to do or not to do something that everybody else is doing. So there's going to
Or
be a contrarian who says, you don't need to wear deodorant. It's a scam. Like,
Or
what
I feel
difference
like
is it?
somebody was maybe trying to sell a course for
Oh, probably,
an
yeah.
industry that was like related to real estate.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And they were like, there's so many people becoming, this is a pyramid scheme, basically making a statement that a lot of these places were recruiting a lot of people to become these brokers and agents. And that was kind of a pyramid scheme.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. I've never heard of any of that. Sounds made up somewhere along the way. Real estate brokers used to have to have a lot of experience, pass a lot of testing to become brokers, and they must follow a very strict set of rules and guidelines. They hire the real estate agents to work for them. Real estate agents are governed by the same rules and regulations. As a rule, I've dealt with a whole lot of real estate, both agents and brokers, and mortgage brokers. As a rule, they are really, really honest people, because if they get caught doing anything illegal, unethical, even borderline, they can lose that real estate license in a second. I've never come across anything other than real estate brokers, real estate agents, and mortgage brokers who were anything less than honest and straightforward.
No, nice.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what
Yeah.
this is
There
that
are
we
a
were
lot
talking
of
about.
I think that they
people-
were doing, from what I remember, they were criticizing how much they were trying to recruit these people to be agents and it was bullshit.
Well, that's a whole different business. People who are trying to get you to take their course. To become a real estate agent, you need to take a course. And I guess they were trying to sell a course,
Yeah.
and
it
that
could
has
be.
nothing to do with being an honest and fair,
legitimate
legitimate
profession.
broker.
There are a lot of people who, when they see how much houses are selling for and they calculate out the percentage of the commission, they think, I'm going to become a real estate broker. Oh my God, they make so much money. As if every day you sell a house. But there are agents out there. I was speaking to a woman a few years ago who was saying for the third quarter, she was the number one real estate agent in her county. She said she sold one house each quarter. She said, that's how bad the market is right now. She said, I am the biggest seller and I've only sold one. There are lots and lots and lots of real estate agents out there who weren't selling anything.
Right
They
now,
were going
this year.
last year, I think it was. They were going door to door, knocking on doors, which has happened to us,
we get- yeah, we get
asking,
people every
would you
minute.
be interested in selling your house?
Sell your house. We'd
You
love to.
get
We can you
letters
great
in the
prices.
mail. You get gifts. We get candy from real estate agents. We sold a house in your neighborhood. Would you like me to sell your house too? It's really aggressive because there's more agents than there are houses.
And it's a real estate agent has a hard job. That person's got to come, usually pick you up and take you all over the place so that you can look at a house and say, no, not really. You got anything else? Oh, this bedroom is a little messy. I don't, it's a hard job. And what happens very often is when kids get married and move out, usually the wife says, I could be a real estate broker. And so there are tons of them. They take the course, which is not
My
all
mother
that
did it.
expensive, did she really? Which is not all that expensive or all that difficult. They take the course, and suddenly they're out there competing with everybody else. It's a very difficult job. So treat your broker nicely.
Period. How was your experience, guys? Tell us.
I was just going to tell you.
Tell
Now,
us.
Drew obviously has done a lot of real estate transaction over the years. He worked for a company that had a lot of knowledge he was able to absorb. My life goal was to buy my own house. And when he and I started dating, I told him that. So he gave me a time frame. He said, okay, you need to save up this amount of money whenever you can. So that's when I put
And
50
get a good credit rating.
Well, yeah, because I had just come out of bankruptcy a few years ago. So a credit rating is what they use to establish your interest rates. If you have a bad credit rating, your interest rates are going to be higher. So I had to get myself on track financially. So I put literally 50% of my expenses. I cut in half, I put it in savings. So I saved a lot of money very quickly. Then I had a friend who was a real estate agent, but he was in a different area. So I had to have him do research to where we wanted to buy. And his point was, I don't want to look at real estate. I don't like looking at real estate. I like buying it. It's this that he wants. So he said, you go look, and when you find something you're seriously interested in, bring me. So shortened version of the story is, I got it down to 2 houses that I wanted. One was a condo and one was a house. And I brought it to him, and I loved the house. The condo, but his point was, if you're doing it for investment, your condo is a better market because you can fix this one up and raise, build equity in it.
It was a condo in very bad shape.
It was a fixer-upper. The house was already done. And so I made the decision to follow his guideline and buy the condo. Still don't forget.
And also
Didn't like your decision.
Well, there's a reason.
there was a reason. There was no property.
I wanted a backyard.
There was no property, and there was no way to expand. If there was property, you say, well, you can build out or build up. But there was no property. That house could not have gone up in value.
Oh, you're talking about the house.
significant- The house.
The house that, well, I'm not going to debate it with you. But anyway, I wanted a house. I wanted a piece of property.
I wanna watch
It had
the
a piece of
debate.
property. He doesn't remember it. He didn't think the house was a good buy. In hindsight, I completely agreed with his argument. But unfortunately, the housing market, condos, dropped in value after we bought it.
Well, that was in 2009 when everything dropped.
Okay, so what ended up happening was I got pre-qualified, which meant that I needed to know whether I was being realistic in buying a house. I needed to talk to someone who was going to look at my situation, the fact that I had had a bankruptcy, how much money I had, what I thought I was going to buy a house for, and tell me
How much you can put down.
whether or not I needed to put a huge down payment. If you put a huge down payment, you can't afford as big a house. But there's something called private mortgage insurance. If you put too low a down payment, if it's a 20% or less, you have to do this private mortgage insurance, which is a very complicated thing. Drew could explain it a little better, but it's a very complicated thing. So I wanted to buy a house where I put more than 20% down. Because of the situation and the values going straight up in 2004, we ended up buying something more expensive than I thought I could afford, but way below market value, because it was such bad shape. When we got the mortgage, at that point, I don't quite understand it, but there were two mortgages simultaneously. There was a mortgage for, I don't know, like 75%, and then there was another mortgage for another 20%. So I put 5% down. The way the rate was at that point, the rates were around 7%. My first mortgage, the big one, was a 7.5% mortgage. The second one, which was a small one to fill in the gap, was 11.5%. And it was a short-term mortgage because I had to pay it off. Anyway, the point being that I was considered a high risk, but I knew financially, since he was part of the buying process, but his name was not on anything. Everything was in my name.
Period.
The point was, we bought it, we fixed it up, the market, the value of it went up, and I was able to refinance 3 years later and take it down to a 6.5%. So instead of having a 7.5% and an 11.5%, I got it down to 6% because the value of the property had gone up.
And then it went down to 4.5%.
And then I refinanced it a third time, where we were able to get it down to 4.5%. But the problem I have is I'm self-employed. And if you look at the numbers based only on my income, I'm stretched too thin. My percentage of my income going to a mortgage statistically is too high. But I'm only paying half of that. But because of tax reasons, his name is nowhere on any of the deeds. I get the full tax benefit because he had other properties.
I didn't need the tax
He
benefit.
didn't need it, right?
So if it was all in his name, he could get the whole tax benefit. And I wasn't going to use it anyway, so this way he was able to use it. But it's that sounded really complicated.
I know. I couldn't
And
get it. I
it's
was trying to
not,
shorten it.
But it,
We'll talk about it in the next episode.
but yeah, we have to talk
more.
about that because that's important to understand.
Yeah.
That sort of financing.
I do have a question about real estate, obviously. So, the apartment that we have in Brazil, we're trying to sell it to get another property, but the market is very bad in Brazil too. When my grandma gave that property to us, my dad and my mom were fighting about where the property was going to be. My dad wanted to be in the suburbs, where in a closed condo where we could play, and my mom wanted it to be closer to what we call it in Brazil, downtown. So like my mom it's more like she's more of a city girl, so she wanted an apartment closer to everything. So we decided to go with my dad. But now that area of the town is devaluing, and it's been a hard time to try to sell it. What should somebody do when they encounter that type of hurdle? Like, I cannot sell. There's nothing that I can do right now.
Number one, none of our listeners are going to have that question or care about it.
But I have that
You
question.
have that, and we can talk about it. But none of our listeners are worried right now about selling their house at the
But
best.
it's still real estate.
Pardon?
It's still real
It's still,
estate.
but it's about selling a house that you have or you've had, and because I don't, you have to know a market. If you ask me the same question about Wyoming or Idaho or Florida, I don't know.
But it's not if somebody is trying to sell their property wherever and they can't, how should
They can. They lower the price.
Just
They
lower it
can.
to the point where
That's how you sell it. If you need to sell it or you want to sell it, absolutely want to sell
just
it.
make it very low?
You have to make it to the height of the low that it'll
you
sell.
possibly
If
can.
you want to sell it for
Or wait.
$200,000, or wait. Those are your options.
One
I
of the
don't
things
know
they
those
they will
markets.
sometimes say, property that's being sold as is, and bring all offers. So in other words, if the house is listed at $200,000, but it's not getting any attention, if they put bring all offers, somebody goes, "I'll give you 50,000 for it," and they're probably not going to say yes. But if they're desperate, and there's a lot of these real estate shows on television about people who buy houses that are way below what they should be, but the house is like a hoarder house where they have to spend $10,000, $20,000 just clearing it out. So in a case where you have a property that's, somebody's died and they need to sell it to get the money, they will often put,
Best offer.
yeah, but there's another term for anxious buyer, anxious seller. Not desperate, but there's another word. Because I was looking at a property like that, bring all offers. And I was like, oh my God, I love this house. It's perfect. But it was 6 months before our lease was up in our apartment, and he wouldn't let me buy it.
Period.
Let
You
you
will
get-
get your
I
backyard.
can't afford it. I wanted that.
I
house.
wish that you could get your backyard. There's still time. Okay, so to finalize very quickly, what would be the red flags in
Well,
buying?
we haven't yet discussed mortgages, have we?
Well, you
skipped
should have
over.
told us.
I've been
It was all
trying.
my
I
story.
couldn't get a word in edgewise.
You can just say
much of it.
stop, 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 stop.
Well, let's just quickly go through. Assuming you have good credit. If you don't have good credit, you have to try to establish it before you apply for a mortgage, if at all possible, because you'll pay, either you won't get a mortgage because your credit is not good, or you'll pay way more for the mortgage than you really should be. Banks these days, at the moment, we're now in October of 2025, banks are charging in the neighborhood of 6.5%. But if you're a first-time home buyer, and I'm assuming most of our listeners will be first-time home buyers, you can get a rate as low as 3.5% through Federal Housing, the FHA, or even better, if you happen to be a veteran, you can get the same 3.5%, and they will often give you a $20,000 assistance, just a grant for nothing, for a down payment, as well as the 3.5%, and potentially no down payment, and they'll guarantee the loan.
Important
So
information.
should you happen to be a veteran, that's a huge, and this is your first home, that's huge. There are also many other many LGBTQ plus organizations that will help you, as well as state organizations. You need to look them up. We may well make another episode specifically about those options and places that you might be able to go. When you're calculating, one last thing I have to say, when you're calculating your payments, you can't just calculate the mortgage. You have to have insurance. If you have putting down less than 20%, you have to include insurance, what they call PMI, private mortgage insurance, which is usually not too expensive, and it's on a small portion. In Michael's case, it was a second loan that he had to have a special insurance on, but you have to include that, as well as all the other costs of gas and electric and water. If it's a condo or a co-op, you have a maintenance fee every month or a homeowners association fee. So you really have to figure all your costs to know what you can afford, so you don't get in a position that you can lose the house. People they go for it, they love it, though. I can pay $1,500 a month for a mortgage, and they can. But when you add on top of that $2,000 for a year for insurance and the water bill and the gas bill and the electric and homeowners association, suddenly they can
Property
be in trouble.
taxes.
Property taxes.
This is interesting because there are, like, I didn't know half of the things that you were talking about. Like, and I guess that a lot of people that don't,
If you haven't bought a house, you don't know about it. Why would
because it's like a lot of information. Do you want to go through the red flags in buying a house?
There are just a few, and I don't want to end the episode without at least mentioning them. One of the worst red flags, and it just happens all the time, is you fall in love with the house. Oh my God, I want this house. It reminds me of my Aunt Jenny's house from when I was a little kid. I can't believe it. It's perfect. and they just don't care about numbers. I just have to have this house. This is the house I want. If the numbers don't work, you really can't have it now. You just can't. You also have to be careful about overpaying, because in that house you'll often overpay. Well, I love it, so I'll manage it. Well, you can want to manage it all you want, but if you can't, you can't, and you can be in really big trouble.
You're not buying a piece of clothing.
No. This is probably the biggest investment you'll make in your whole life, more than any car or anything else you'll buy. Another thing people do is say that to try to incentivize the seller, we'll skip inspections. I hear that, I just really want to cry. You can't skip an inspection. There are things inspections won't even pick up. But there are major things. Suddenly they find that there's a structural problem in your house,
Which is important.
which could cost you $100,000 to fix.
Or
can't be
is
fixed.
not
Is
fixable.
not fixable.
And these are the type of things that you
Your
should
house
know
will
bef-
collapse because it's starting to split.
And you won't get a certificate of occupancy. You need an inspection. And an inspection is usually not all that expensive for a residence. And it's pages and pages long, most of which is not too important, but it'll tell you everything. Don't skip the inspection.
And the
whatever you do.
inspection report can sometimes give you negotiating power with the with the
very
buyer.
true.
So
Very
if you
true.
find something that they're not telling you, like for instance that the furnace is about to go and they didn't tell you
Or the
that,
roof.
or the roof or whatever, you can either have them pay to have it repaired or cut that off the cost of the house.
Okay.
So that's a very good reason for an
yes.
inspection.
Watch how, for you guys planning on buying your first property, you know what I mean? Pay your, what's it called?
Inspection.
Inspection.
Pay for your inspection. Also, the last I knew, the people who say, I can fix that. Everybody,
I can fix it.
I can't say. I never say that. I can't fix anything.
I can smash it with a sledgehammer,
You can fix more than I can
but I
fix.
can't put it back together.
But suddenly you have this house and you've decided you can you can change the plumbing or you can switch out the electric. And after you're laying on the floor because you got a shock and say, I guess I can't do this, you got to hire somebody to do it.
Yeah.
And electricians and plumbers are very expensive, even for the simplest things.
And worth it.
And well worth it. Absolutely well
their
worth
job.
it. And often required. I mean, there are things that the township will not, you need a permit. And they're not going to give you a permit if you say, oh, I'm going to do that. You need a certified person. Those are the red flags to look for, really, really important, so that you don't get in trouble.
Period. This was our version of Real Estate Part 2. Make sure to watch Part 1, which we'll be linking down below. Make sure to like.
Comment.
And subscribe.
Also share with a friend so we can keep the conversation going. And make sure to stay up to date with Instagram.
And please remember that this is for educational and entertainment purposes only. And that if you have any questions, we would love to hear from you. We'll either answer them or possibly even make a podcast about it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.